There's a special kind of pain that only family can inflict, a betrayal that cuts deeper than any knife. My name is Kate Foster, and I learned this lesson the hard way. I was the responsible one, the good daughter, until my sister decided she wanted my life. She fed our parents a stream of poison, turning them against me, until I was nothing, an outcast in my own home. They thought I'd break, that I'd just accept the humiliation and fade away. What they didn't know was that in the ruins of my old life, I found a single terrifying secret she never wanted our mother to find. Like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channel. We always appreciate the time you spent here with us. The air in Harmony Creek always smells the same, a blend of fresh-cut grass in the summer and the faint, comforting scent of burning wood from the local bakery in the fall. It was the quintessential mid-sized suburban town in the American Midwest, the kind of place where everyone knew your last name and social appearances were currency. The Fosters, my family, had a considerable bank account of that currency. We were the embodiment of small-town values, successful church-going, and protective of our image. I, however, had always felt the pressure of those expectations like a cheap, too-tight suit. My name is Kate Foster. I was 28 and by all accounts doing fine. I worked at the Bound Page, the community bookstore downtown. It wasn't the high-powered career my parents Marlene and Jeff had envisioned, but I loved it. I loved the smell of old paper and the quiet rhythm of helping people find the right story. My passion was helping others, connecting with the community, but the thread of familial expectation always tethered me, preventing me from fully cutting the cord. My parents were traditional, staunchly so. Marlene and Jeff cared deeply about what the neighbors thought, what the church committee thought, and what the other members of the golf club thought. My sister Emily, 3 years my junior at 25, was their favorite exhibit piece. Emily was charming, effortlessly sociable, and had a way of turning every family gathering into a celebration of her latest minor achievement. I loved her, I truly did, but lately that love felt brittle. There was an undercurrent of tension, a faint, sour note beneath the seemingly perfect harmony of our family dynamic. The small incident started subtly, innocuously enough. My application for a grant to host a children's reading program at the bookstore was rejected after the committee received an anonymous note questioning my organizational skills. A dinner date with a promising new guy, James, ended awkwardly when he mentioned he'd heard I was planning to leave town soon and wasn't looking for anything serious, a blatant lie. Then there was the biggest one, the Community Harvest Festival centerpiece. I had spent weeks designing the floral display for the bookstore's booth, sacrificing my evenings, only to find Emily beaming next to it on the local news, accepting praise for what she called her passion project. Each time I shoved the suspicion down, rationalizing it. The grant committee was probably overwhelmed. James must have misunderstood something. Emily just got excited and forgot to correct the reporter. I was Kate Foster, the independent, determined one, and independent people didn't blame their failures on their younger sister. I struggled with the guilt. Was I jealous? Was I inventing drama? The desire for independence clashed violently with the ingrained loyalty to my family. But then came the email. It was late one Tuesday. I was scrolling through my old university emails looking for a syllabus when I spotted a draft in Emily's abandoned account, still linked to the family desktop. It was addressed to my boss, Mr. Davison. The subject line, concerns about Kate's reliability. My hands started shaking. The draft detailed my recent erratic behavior, claiming I was borrowing money from the store, till a monstrous, deliberate lie, and that my creative passion was just a cover for poor work ethic. But the truly venomous part was the signature. It was drafted to look like it came from a concerned Harmony Creek resident. Emily had covered her tracks poorly, accidentally saving the draft before changing the sender information. A wave of ice-cold certainty washed over me, instantly freezing the self-doubt. This wasn't accidental. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was sabotage. Intentional, calculated, and designed to ruin my career, my reputation, and my future in this town. The undeniable proof a private, hateful message threatening my livelihood was staring back at me from the glowing screen. I stared out the window of the den. The suburbs were quiet, the streetlights casting long, lonely shadows on the perfectly manicured lawns. The rain, which had been a gentle mist all evening, suddenly started hammering against the glass. This is not accidental. I repeated the words, a cold knot in my chest. This is intentional. Emily's betrayal was real concrete, and it threatened everything I had built. I shut the laptop, the click echoing in the sudden silence. I knew then that the easy, familiar life I'd been clinging to was gone, and the quiet war against my own sister had just begun. The printout of Emily's hateful draft felt like a physical weapon in my hand, yet when I entered the house that evening, I held it back. The initial confrontation had to be cautious. I found Emily in the kitchen humming while arranging flowers. "We need to talk about the bookstore grant," I started, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. She didn't even look up. "Oh, that. Such a shame, Kate. Maybe your heart wasn't truly in it." When I pressed her, mentioning the rumors about the till and the dating situation, her response was instant and dismissive. "You're being paranoid, Kate. You always make a mountain out of a molehill. Maybe James just didn't like you. Not everything is a conspiracy." She expertly turned my reality into a flawed perception. My parents, Marlene and Jeff, overhearing the raised voices, intervened immediately, but not on my side. "Kate, honestly, you're too sensitive. Emily is trying to help you be more focused. You need to stop manufacturing drama." Dad sighed, leaning heavily into his defensive posture. I felt completely gaslit. My undeniable proof was instantly negated by the wider family complicity in maintaining the facade of Emily's perfection and my inherent instability. My career at the bookstore, which had been the one secure pillar in my adult life, now suffered palpable damage. Mr. Davison began assigning me menial tasks, avoiding my eye, and the grant money was reallocated to another community member. My romantic life was non-existent, tainted by Emily's baseless claims. I felt a deepening emotional vulnerability. The isolation was profound. I'd always thought that if the world turned against me, my family would be my shield. Now they were the ones holding the sword. The frustration and loneliness I felt were a heavy weight, but they also fueled a slow, cold burn of resolve. I knew I couldn't confront them directly again without concrete leverage. I began to reclaim my agency by taking proactive steps, acting like the detective in my own life. I started documenting everything. I kept a meticulous date-stamped journal detailing every interaction, every veiled slight, and every consequence of Emily's actions. I backed up the email draft on an encrypted flash drive. I also began reaching out to old contacts to discreetly ask about the rumors, realizing that the truth, when twisted, had a way of echoing through Harmony Creek. The emotional toll was immense. I slept poorly and felt constantly on guard, but I was no longer a passive victim. As I took steps forward, Emily became more aggressive. The rumors escalated from minor workplace gossip to something truly damaging. She started hinting to Mrs. Albright, the town's biggest gossip, that I had been involved in an inappropriate relationship with a married coworker years ago, a vicious, unfounded lie that threatened to poison the small moral community's perception of me entirely. She also made a very public show of helping Mom plan a massive charity gala, ensuring she was constantly in their good graces and further cementing my status as the problem child. It was during this time that I found an unexpected source of support in Mrs. Petra, an elderly woman who frequented the bookstore and had always encouraged my creative ambitions. She was a fixture in Harmony Creek, but lived slightly outside the main social orbit. When I hesitantly described the feeling of being actively undermined, she listened without judgment. "Kate," she said, her voice dry and steady, "resilience isn't just about bouncing back. It's about knowing when to stop letting people walk all over you. They can only manipulate you if you keep letting them play their game." Her guidance wasn't a solution, but a quiet encouragement to act with resilience and stop trying to win back the approval of people who had already turned their backs. The turning point came one stormy evening, the rain lashing the windows of our usually quiet house. Dad had been offered an incredible, unexpected promotion at his regional bank, one that required him to relocate the entire family. Emily, seeing an opportunity, burst into the living room, claiming she had been the one making connections, subtly pulling strings with the bank CEO's family at a recent club dinner, implying her social efforts were the reason for his success. "We owe this to Emily," Dad beamed, pulling her into a proud hug while Mom nodded approvingly. My future, my job, my entire life in Harmony Creek, all of it was about to be uprooted, not for the family's stability, but purely to serve Emily's inflated ego and my parents' misplaced pride in her. As I stood there invisible, watching Emily bask in the glory of something she hadn't earned while simultaneously ruining my foundation, I realized the cold, hard truth: I could not rely on my parents' support or fairness. They were too blinded by their own desires for status and too invested in Emily's lies. I had to act decisively, and I had to do it alone. The time for caution was over. I was done being the silent victim of their stormy turmoil. I spent the next 48 hours executing my plan. The plan wasn't about petty revenge. It was about confronting the family and the community with the raw, undeniable truth, thereby reclaiming my voice and my life. I decided the confrontation had to be public, not in a screaming match across the dinner table, but at a forum where appearance mattered most, the annual Harmony Creek Community Council meeting held in the brightly lit, acoustically resonant hall near the town square. My parents, as pillars of the community, were required to attend, and Emily, still riding the high of Dad's supposed promotion, would certainly be there expecting more accolades. The stakes were terrifyingly high. Exposing Emily meant exposing my parents' complicity and my family's internal rot to the entire town. I risked not just losing my parents' love entirely, but destroying their carefully curated social standing, which in their world was akin to complete ruin. The emotional weight of this possibility almost crushed me, but the memory of Emily's draft email, the intentional malicious lie about stealing, steeled my spine. I was fighting for my survival. I waited until the end of the meeting during the open floor session. The hall was packed. The air felt thick and humid. I walked to the podium, the encrypted flash drive and a file of documented evidence heavy in my jacket pocket. As I stepped up, the murmurs died down, and I felt the collective gaze of Harmony Creek focused on me. I didn't frame my opening as an attack. I framed it as a necessity. I need to speak about integrity, not just the integrity of this town, but the integrity within our own homes. The explosion was swift and devastating. I started calmly recounting the small acts of sabotage, the grant application, the dating rumors. Then I pulled up the crucial piece of evidence on the projector, the image of Emily's saved draft email to Mr. Davison, the one accusing me of theft. The sight of the words, "concerns about Kate's reliability," in my sister's own format right there for everyone to see, brought a collective gasp from the room. My parents immediately jumped to Emily's defense. "Kate, this is a private matter. You're humiliating us," my mother shrieked, her face pale with outrage, her hands gesturing wildly. My father, Jeff, was on his feet, pure fury in his eyes. "You stop this now. You will not ruin your sister's reputation for your own failures." Emily, however, wasn't performing. For once, her mask cracked. She stared at the screen, her composure dissolving into genuine panic, then tearful rage. "It was just a mistake. I was worried about you, Kate. You were so stressed I never sent it," she screamed, the lie sounding hollow even to her own ears. I faced them, tears stinging my own eyes, but my voice was level and strong. "A mistake doesn't account for the systematic lies, Emily. And a true parent doesn't instantly side with the accuser without hearing the truth." The emotional accusations flew back and forth. I didn't shout back. I simply stated the facts: the email, the ruined dates, the false rumors about my coworker. I demonstrated my own achievements by showing the grant committee the original rejected proposal and the letters of support I had gathered, proving my competence while countering Emily's malicious narrative. The turning point came when I looked directly at my parents. "I am not doing this for revenge," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but carrying across the stunned silence of the room. "I am doing this to reclaim my life. I will not accept being the victim anymore. You chose to believe lies over your own daughter's character." I reached down and physically disconnected the laptop from the projector, the harsh clack of the cable symbolizing a break far greater than a piece of technology. I didn't wait for their response, for the inevitable judgment of the crowd, or for Emily's tears to turn into another manipulative performance. The rain had started outside again, a rhythmic drumming on the roof of the hall. I walked away from the podium through the shocked silence and pushed open the heavy wooden doors. The cool, wet air hit my face like a shock. I had asserted my truth, but the outcome was utterly uncertain. I had just laid waste to my entire family structure, and I didn't know if anything could ever be built from the wreckage. As I got into my car and drove away, the headlights cutting through the downpour, I tasted the metallic tang of freedom and the profound sorrow of absolute loss. The rift felt permanent. The immediate fallout from the community council meeting was exactly as explosive as I had anticipated, yet strangely quiet for me. I retreated entirely, staying at Mrs. Petra's spare apartment on the edge of town for a few days, letting the storm rage without me. The phone calls from my parents were a mixture of outrage and muffled pleading anger that I had embarrassed them, and confusion about how I could do such a thing. I didn't answer. I needed space to let the dust settle and to grieve the family I thought I had. Community gossip, which always moved at the speed of light in Harmony Creek, was intense. The reactions were mixed, exactly reflecting the divisions in small-town American values. Some people, the status-conscious older generations, were furious at me for violating the sacred code of family privacy and challenging social order. They saw me as the destroyer. But others, younger people, coworkers, and several supportive neighbors, reached out to offer validation and support, reinforcing the fundamental American sense of resilience and justice. They understood I was fighting for my personal freedom against suffocating familial control. My reputation wasn't ruined. It was redefined as someone who dared to speak the truth no matter the cost. During those days of seclusion, I focused solely on my own character growth. I demonstrated resilience by showing up for my shift at the bookstore the very next day, refusing to hide. I asserted my agency by arranging a meeting with Mr. Davison, not to beg for forgiveness, but to show him the evidence, and calmly state that the environment of gossip needed to stop, or I would find a workplace that valued integrity. I set a firm boundary. Truth and respect were non-negotiable. It felt liberating, like shedding a heavy wet coat I had been wearing for years. The self-respect I gained from that firmness was more valuable than any apology. The most difficult consequences were internal. The sorrow for the past wounds, the years of doubt, the emotional isolation was profound. But that sorrow was coupled with tentative hope for the future. I was no longer the girl constantly seeking validation. I was Kate, the woman who had fought for her own worth. My parents finally showed glimpses of understanding when Dad texted me 2 days later, not with an accusation, but with a short, stiff message. "Your mother is very upset. I need to know you are safe." It wasn't an apology, but it was a step back from outright condemnation. They were concerned for me, separate from their concerns about their reputation. Emily's reaction was more complicated. She hadn't reached out directly, but Mrs. Petra, who was a close friend of my aunt, mentioned that Emily hadn't left the house, wasn't performing, and was genuinely showing vulnerability. She wasn't just angry, she was ashamed. The performance had ended and the audience had seen behind the curtain. I allowed myself one controlled interaction with her. I went home to pick up some more clothes, timing it when I knew my parents were out. Emily was sitting on the stairs, her face tear-streaked. She didn't launch into an attack. She simply looked at me and said, "I don't know why I did it, Kate. I just..." I couldn't stand that you had the courage I didn't. It was a small, raw moment of truth, the first genuine thing she had said in months. It opened a path toward potential reconciliation, a tiny crack of light in the thick wall between us. But I held firm. That courage cost me everything, Em. And I'm not giving it back up. I didn't wait for her reply. I gathered my things and left. I felt relief at reclaiming my self-agency, but also a deep sadness that this rupture had been necessary. I knew the process of healing would be long, but for the first time, I felt like I was walking on my own ground. I was free, and that feeling, coupled with the knowledge that I had acted with courage and integrity, was a powerful, beautiful thing. 6 months passed, marked by small, deliberate steps toward rebuilding a foundation based not on performance, but on truth. The family reconciliation was slow, often painful, but real. It began with dialogue, not arguments. My parents finally sought me out, not to scold, but to listen. They had to face the reality that their obsession with appearances had blinded them, and they admitted tearfully that they had failed me. It wasn't a sudden cinematic hug, but a series of quiet, heartfelt conversations where they acknowledged my independence and the pain they had caused. My relationship with Emily required more deliberate action, more shared vulnerability. She started coming to the bookstore not to gloat or manipulate, but just to sit and read. One afternoon, while shelving books, she finally spoke about the root of her jealousy, the profound fear that my genuine passion and independence made her feel shallow and fake. I shared the pressure I had felt to meet their impossible expectations. We weren't instantly best friends, but we found a bridge in small acts of trust, a shared cup of coffee, an inside joke, acknowledging that we were both just trying to find our place outside the shadow of the foster ideal. I still held firm boundaries, understanding that compassion didn't mean allowing old patterns to resurface, but the connection was being repaired, thread by fragile thread. I emerged from the ordeal transformed. I was stronger, emotionally clear, and self-empowered. I learned to balance my inherent resilience with genuine compassion, understanding that betrayal often stems from a place of deep insecurity. I was independent but not isolated, connected but not controlled. I had found the maturity to know that freedom was less about running away and more about standing firm in my own truth, regardless of who approved. My community reintegration felt complete. Mr. Davison, impressed by my integrity and the support I had received from other residents, offered me a partnership in the bookstore, recognizing that my courage and honesty had strengthened my role in Harmony Creek. My reputation wasn't merely restored, it was strengthened. I became a quiet symbol of the impact of personal agency and courage, demonstrating that confronting difficulty with integrity only deepened one's social bonds. I regularly saw supportive neighbors at the bookstore, and even my old date James returned, having heard the real story and respecting my willingness to fight for myself. The final emotional image I carry is of a quiet Sunday afternoon. I wasn't at the golf club or attending a performance. I was back at my parents' house sitting on the porch swing. Emily was there too, sketching quietly in a notebook. Mom brought out iced tea. There was no tension, no pretense, just a comfortable, easy silence. The air smelled of rain and fresh earth the same as always, but it felt different. It felt honest. My father came out, and instead of talking about his job or the neighbors, he asked me about a book I was currently reading. As I sat there sharing a genuinely peaceful moment with my family, I reflected on the lessons learned. The betrayal had nearly destroyed me, but confronting it with courage hadn't ruined my family. It had saved it, forcing us all to be authentic, not merely decorative. The catharsis was profound. I knew the scar would always be there, a reminder of the cost of silence, but also a testament to the power of my own voice. The familiar landscape of Harmony Creek now looked different to me. It was a place where I was finally seen, truly known, and genuinely loved. The ending was not a fairy tale, but a hard-won triumph, leaving me with a profound belief in the power of choosing truth over appearance, even when that truth seems destined to destroy everything you know. And just like that, Kate finally closed that painful chapter of her life, ready to start fresh. What did you think of the steps she took to reclaim her life? Share your thoughts below. We read every single comment to hear your perspective. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss our next story. Thank you for listening. This has been a story from Revenge Hour. We'll see you next time.